Hello and welcome to TFT European Regional Finals and World Qualifiers. Final day, game number 1. Enjoy.
Pride to yourself, to your country, to all your career that you've been putting so much time into in TFT. But I think for some players, maybe just top 4 is enough. They want to continue their season. They want to make it to the championship as well. And the playstyles might differ as well. We saw in the stats, so a few players have very little win rate, really. They have a very low win rate, but a very high top 4 rate. That might be the goal, to just make it to the top 4. Other players like Enzo, like Canvas, have a very high win rate. They might be looking at winning the whole thing.
No, absolutely. It's worth reiterating again what we've got at stake in these 6 games. So top 4 straight through to the Global Championship. The 5th and 6th place players going on to the Western Last Chance Qualifier. Well, there's one more spot at the Global Championship, and the bottom 2 players will go no further than this. So absolutely with you here. We have got some excellent top 4 players in this lobby, and playing for top 4 honestly seems like a very sensible strategy.
And if that's your strategy, I think a comp like the Renegades Riftwalker we saw a lot of yesterday, specifically for Ging, who we're seeing here now. He played 4 different games of Renegades yesterday. It's a very flexible comp. It has you can put in so many different units and still find success with it. You don't depend on a specific roll down for only looking for a few specific units. You can flex in so many different threats as well. And we'll see if Ging has the same strategy today. For now, he's starting off with a Brawler frontline, Renekton on the bench, and the Yasuo online, maybe trying to look for a Laser Core start. Of course, Laser Core is a trade that needs to have a lot going for it. You have to really snowball that stage 2.
I do want to bring up, of course, Ging's performance over this tournament has been absolutely eye-opening. Had a super rough day 1, managed to get only even in the top 4 at all, only twice over the 6 games played. But now, as we open things up with Prismatic, Ging has been on a rise, and now we've got the chance to really show what that means.
And I did see Mortdog in the chat pressing buttons. He is awake. He's ready to go. He's going to give us as many Prismatics as he can for this final day in the EMEA finals. And we're going to see the few options that are picked up here. Of course, Prismatics do completely alter the way games play out. They really do spike the power level overall starting off. If you're trying to play for a lose streak, you might end up losing by a lot more than you would usually because the power level is just higher. There's more combat strength or more econ as well, depending on what kind of route you take with your Prismatic choice.
Now let's see what Hayden goes for here. So information being valued above all. We'll get the Radiant Zephyr in, and we'll know every single one of his opponents from here until the end. Certainly in the early going, especially if he hasn't been scouted yet by some of these opponents, there will be a big catch off guard, and so many of those important carries will be cornered.
And of course, without getting too deep into the math, if you're Zephyring a unit for this long, and it's 1 out of 4 units on the board, the impact is that much higher than it is in the later stage of the game where there's 8 or 7 units on the board. So for stage 2 especially, it's going to be a very, very strong augment to pick up if you want a win streak, as long as your board is anywhere near decent. And it looks like for Hayden, it is not quite yet, barely loses this first fight.
And we can see Kafuzzle with the tomes of traits. This is a conversation we were having a little bit yesterday as well, comparing where the golden tome of traits versus Prismatic. In Kafuzzle's case, now will Pop looking for that direction, and Pop's the second one as well. Infiniteam and Sure Shot together, you really couldn't have asked for too much better.
It's one of the 2 best paths. You could have also gone something like a Gadgettine plus Prankster, but it wasn't offered any Gadgettine in that first choice. We saw in day 1, he played 3 games of Gadgettine reroll. I believe he got first in 2 of them and top 4 in the third. So maybe that was the preferred line, but overall Infiniteam, with the power spike you get of just getting an extra unit copied essentially, and the 5 Infiniteam power spike as well, reaching that early is going to be so impactful, and it almost guarantees that Kerfuzzle, I think, will be able to have a win streak going all throughout this stage 2.
Yeah, talking to Kafuzzle before this all started, he definitely sees himself as a big underdog today, very much less competitive experience than everybody else. But as you said, Kafuzzle absolutely knows what to do with a strong start, and that's absolutely what we've got here. Up against Enzo, of course, so many eyes on to see if we can finally see Enzo even being knocked down slightly of a peg.
Ends up losing the fight. A very strong board. We saw that from Enzo. A Vayne online, a Kill 2, a Pantheon 2, a Morgana early on. With the Electric Charge especially going to have that great synergy and ends up winning that fight. Enzo's really a player to beat here. I think every single player has probably studied what he's been playing the first 2 days because his stats were really ridiculous considering the field of players. He isn't just playing, on ladder, playing against some Masters players, some Grandmasters players. He's playing against the 32 best players in EMEA, and still he managed a 90% top 4 rate. His meta read is on point, and going into this day 3, we're going to wonder what he will be playing, what routes he takes, what lines he decides on to try and find that same success.
We check in with Ging, who of course has got the Prismatic Tome of traits of his own. We can see that Underground has come into play as well as Laser Core. An interesting combination for King, not as obvious as what we saw for Confuzzled.
And this board here just so strong for Enzo. A 3-win streak. He's going to be thinking, do I want to make gold here? It's so important early in the game because it snowballs that interest. He opts not to in the end. Has already leveled to 5, so obviously playing for very high tempo, saying, hey, as long as my win streak is not broken, I will not be punished for losing out on a bit of econ.
So as we head onto our first carousel, we will see Mighty Eggs before us, promising prizes later down the line. But just a quick coverage on the other augments we've seen come in, because some of these are kind of interesting. From Cambiz picking up the Prankster Crown, from Kevin Parker picking up the Golden Ticket to allow for maximum rerolls, and for Lushev, we've got the Infinity Crown, Ketzer the Spellslinger Crown. So we are seeing a lot of direction being decided early by these prismatic augments.
Yeah, players giving up flexibility, giving up a little bit to the, giving up a bit of their player agency, let's say, in terms of, hey, I have this very high cap in terms of getting a bigger power spike by getting the extra, unit trait essentially coming online. But I give up my flexibility on stage 4 when I roll down. I'm now maybe fixed into just a few specific units or a specific comp, which is also kind of good in terms of the information. Players can now scout everyone else and say, all right, this guy picked up Infinity Crown. I'm fairly certain he's going to be going into this line, playing these specific units, not going to be going into maybe Riftwalkers, for example, or a more flexible comp. So it's, on some sides, a bad thing because you give up your own ability to make decisions in the later game. But in some cases, if you know how to execute on these lines very well, you can have a big plus.
Well, we get to see the 2 of the 3 French players up against each other now. So, of course, we noted the Prankster emblem from before. One of the more recent changes being that the Gadgetines now get along very well with Pranksters indeed. It's not a Gadgetine emblem, but it might be enough to break the streak. The Jinx is still stacking up, but no. For now, Enzo will remain the only undefeated player with one more round to go.
And to no surprise, he's leveled to 6 at 2-5. If he would have lost here, that might have been, I'm going to be honest, the end of his game. It's so daunting and such a bad thing to happen if you end up going super high tempo and you get punished by losing. It's almost, I'm going to say impossible to recover from that econ being so low, but in this case, he does end up winning. He has to win this next fight as well, has to get that 5-win streak going into Krugs.
All right, we've got a few more people to keep track of as well. Ketzer, of course, picking up the Spellslinger Crown. We did, of course, expect Oxlingers to be very popular. It's kind of dropped off a little bit as it went, but in this case, we've now got the ability to bring in an additional Spellslinger to provide a little bit more variety to the comp.
Is playing Underground, has won his last round, though, so the win-loss is not ideal. Obviously, for Underground, you're either playing all in on the loss streak, or you're not playing it at all for the most part, but we'll see what Ketzer's able to do. The blue buff is huge, but the Zephyr is even bigger in terms of the outcome of this fight. The main damage dealer in this case is Sona, up in the air for 8 full seconds. It's going to be so hard to climb back into this, considering that Hayden has only lost 1 fight, and even then, it was by 1 unit. He's at 98 HP. Will it be enough with his kill? Will it be enough with the Ashe, the Renekton, and the Ashe upgrades after that first fight were so paramount, and in this case, still enough for Hayden to win, and to have, again, a bit of a win streak going into Krugs.
Yeah, so it's not a full 2 undefeated players, but it's pretty darn close.
Oh, Samir in the shop, and he's playing Underground. Oh my god, Ketzer, what are you doing to us?
I mean, this seems like incredible news. I mean, Ketzer's still in a pretty good position HP-wise, unlike Kevin Parker, who is on a full loss streak right now, with at least a good amount of money in the bank. In fact, way more than anybody else in the lobby.
It's a tough spot for Ketzer. I think he's not even going to consider the Underground because he already just cashed out. He thinks he's too strong to be playing Underground, and I agree with him. I think most of the time you can't really fight what the game is giving you or telling you to do. If you have a huge loss streak start, you don't have 3 item components at the very beginning, you have an augment that leads to more econ that makes it richer. The game is telling you, hey, play Underground and lean into this. But he's getting a lot of upgrades. He has good items slammed. He has good upgrades and the augment as well. So I think he's just going to try to play for a win streak now, forget about Underground.
Yeah, within a decent position to do so. Good amount of money in the bank. We can see, again, most of our players are around 30 gold right now. As Confuzzled and Lushes start to slip a little bit down. King as well. Up the top, Hayden and Enzo will be dictating the pace for a time being as Kevin, who is on below 60 HP already, is spending some of that accumulated money to try and push this board's power.
I don't know how our top of show is always so good. It was whatever we cover in the meta talks, the same thing becomes relevant in game 1. We just saw Golden Ticket roll down with the Lulu reroll for Cambiz in day 2. In this case, Kevin Parker playing the exact same line, the exact same augment as well, trying to find that Lulu 3 and the Pantheon 3 before he usually does, usually to the at 4-1 or maybe at the end of stage 3, but in this case, he's trying to find those upgrades much earlier on at stage 3, at the very beginning of stage 3, really.
Yeah, presumably being a little bit gun-shy about the amount of damage he's taking, but even with those upgrades, Cambis is handing out the pain as well. From a little further up the table, Enzo's and Hayden keep up the pressure, and we're going to be seeing our hero augments coming in 3, 3, and 4.
3, 3, 4. We're going to see if maybe a Viego support is going to be the option for Kevin playing this hard comp. It's maybe not as easy to fit in whatever pickup is going to happen. Yeah, Partners in Crime might be the pickup, and it is. So Viego carry, will be the pickup here. It does fit into the hearts board, usually much later into the game once you level into the Sona for 4 hearts, and then eventually into the Viego and the Syndra for 4 hearts, or 6 hearts, rather. So it's going to have to come in a little bit earlier. You don't want to miss out on the strength of the augment itself. And you kind of want to end this loss streak at some point in time. Kevin is down now to 46 HP, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. With the current situation with Kevin Parker, we've already got the Hextech Gunblade in there for the Lulu. I was going to say, it's effectively a bit of an extra item for her, but maybe not as big of an impact as Kevin would have liked. So we take a quick look across our different options coming in. We can see Power Grid, big data for Ging, and a very nice pickup as well. Ends up at the top with a Darken Assimilation as well. We've seen that occasionally, but certainly not a common choice at all.
If you have a ton of belts already that fit with Aatrox's kit perfectly, then it's definitely going to be an option. In most cases, I think it's just a chase of, you roll down a few times with the augment choices, you're not giving anything better, and you end up having to play this. It is going to be just kind of a flexible frontline you can slot in over something like Oxfords and Spellslingers or Mecha, which is an option in most other cases as that default frontline for Stage 4.
Well, Kevin Parker managing to turn the tide somewhat, taking a little chunk out of Kerfuzzle there, as again, our mid-table keep roughly cohering with each other.
One more.
Yeah, we're waiting to see if the 3 stars come in.
A very tough choice. He's off, 2 off of Lulu. The golden ticket rerolls were free there, so he just ended up rolling a little bit more. And now only 1 off, going to try and finish this off, going to try and end, or continue this win streak rather. Another awkward position there, finds another Maul fight, can pick it up.
I was thinking for a second Kevin Parker might be cursing the existence of the egg on the bench, cutting out 1 more spot for the reroll, but that's going to be a huge relief. Notice again, Kevin's bench immediately gets filled up again. There are lots of units to find before this board is fully online. And with a Zephyr landing onto the Lulu, that's one particular egg in basket that's not going to be part of most of this round.
It is definitely one major disadvantage of trying to play a reroll comp when you have this start with the egg over something like a duplicator, for example, which is the complete opposite. It tends to be a big advantage to hit your 3 stars earlier on, but looks like it might be another loss for Kevin in this case. We're going to have to hope and see what the last augment will be, because Lulu is a comp we all have seen over the last 2 days. It is a comp that can become essentially an Exodia comp if the right augments are found. In this case, something like an Axiomarch, for example, is fantastic. Something like Last Stand as well, especially at 3-2 because you plan to lose the next few fights anyway, so the lack of combat power isn't actually a disadvantage.
Well, it's certainly not a composition we've seen Kevin Parker making an impact with during the first 2 days of play. It's definitely much more comfortable on the Renegade line, but you said before, doing the wins and losses together and not having very much money in the bank is certainly a recipe for disaster, particularly when the rest of the lobby is still so far ahead. Enzo, Cambiz, they're now the ones on win streaks. Hayden having dropped theirs, as we see Ging with a chance to cash out, but he will not take it.
And picks up the Underground emblem off of the Tome of Traits, so a very unusual way to play Underground in this case. Trying to make the best of it, does not cash out there in the end, going to continue this run. And Ging is a player that we saw yesterday, was not taking any risks. He was trying to play as top 4 as possible, played 4 games of Renegade for that reason, of the Riftwalker comp. Ended up having a very good day 2, a very stable day 2, top 4 at every single game. Starting off now with Underground, doesn't really lean into that same mentality. You're playing a little bit riskier in this case.
Yeah, I mean, we've still got the ability to cap out with the Mordekai's a little bit later on, but it does seem quite far away. Of course, when you've got players like Kevin Parker who are so desperate to get their game really started here, you're going to run into a little bit of trouble. Lulu now up to 3 items. We're going face-to-face with the Warp, but I think, no, we'll just about get through. So at least, I suppose, we're getting some things, getting some Underground stacks, but right now, just riding a small loss streak and not very much money.
And now any player would have loved to matchmake into Kevin before he's hit all these power spikes. Now he's hit all of his upgrades. He has a 3-item Lulu. The Glitter Lance is essentially one-shotting pretty much everything that doesn't have a ton of HP or a ton of magic resist. And in this case, anyone that faces Kevin now, especially the win-streaking players like Enzo or Cambiz, might be in trouble. The win streak might come to an end because someone has hit a power spike much earlier than they tend to. Power spikes usually come in at 4-1 when players roll down, or at 4-2 when a specific augment is hit.
So talk to me about, as we're getting close to stage 4, we've got 1 more round before it's all done. We've still got the 2 win-streaking players in there. Yeah, how are we expecting to see them adjust to try and take account of this spike from Kevin?
Well, you just have to match it, really. In that case, that means hitting all your upgrades, hitting your Warwick 2 in the case of Ging, for example. Ging playing Laser Core, a comp that we saw quite a bit of in days 1 and 2, but I think the success wasn't quite there. I think it's a comp that really needs to have a lot of things going right, and one of those things is +1 Laser Core off of that Tome of Traits. We talked about it in the day 1 top of show. We talked about Tome of Traits essentially cheating your way into specific emblems that were removed at 2-1, like Gadgettine, like Laser Core, and because it was just too big of a power spike. So in this case, Ging is able to get that through a different way off of the Ancient Archives, and now has that massive power spike all throughout the early game.
That would have been an absolutely amazing Edge of Night for Ging if it hadn't already been completed, but I imagine they'll be finding some use on maybe just reforging it down the line. For now, though, coming into Stage 4, Enzo, of course, our current frontrunner based on his day 1 and 2 performance, is so far completely undefeated. For anybody else who's looking at the title of EMEA Regional Champion, that's some pretty bad news.
And you might be surprised here, but I'm going to say that Kerfuzzle's in a very, very doomed spot just from seeing his HP, considering the spot he was in at 2-1. He picked up an Infinity Team crest, he picked up the Sure Shot crest as well, but he still is nowhere close to win streaking. Usually when we see someone able to get to 5 Infinity Team very early into the game, they're able to maintain a huge HP lead over the rest of the lobby because of the power you get from that trait early on. Not the case here for Kerfuzzle. I imagine he just did not hit any key upgrades like Sivir 2 earlier on, and is now at 39 HP beater.
Did at least just find a Garen, but Kerfuzzle did say he was going to be trying to play his more comfortable lines. Hopefully for him, Infinity Team will be one of those. For the Garen in place will be duplicated up to provide a greater front line. Looks like the Zephyr didn't have the impact it would have had on some of the other boards. I have to imagine as things go on, Hayden will get less and less advantage from being able to snipe out the primary carry. You mentioned before, more dispersed power makes you less vulnerable. And for now, Kerfuzzle will break his loss streak from the bottom of the table, keeping himself even with Kevin Parker.
He does really have to essentially win all of Stage 4 without rolling. Infinity Team is a comp that if you wanted to do really well, especially to win out entirely, you need to have a lot of gold to do so. Essentially going 9, trying to fill in your board with things like Urgot, Fiddle, obviously a Garen 2, Samira 2, etc. That's expensive. It's not an easy comp to play from behind, which is the case for Kerfuzzle in terms of HP.
Ooh, we've got an interesting option here, so with no rerolls left, Sure Shot crest could be for a second time, and this time being picked up the regular way, so there will be a chunk more damage coming out from the back line. But the front line is relying pretty heavily on this Garen to keep the wolves at bay.
He's trying to maybe find a Belveth or an Urgot, which would be a really good holder of the Sure Shot emblem. He's rolling at 7, though. That means that it's going to be that much harder to get to level 8, and I don't know if this is the right play if you're trying to play for, again, a top 4, a good spot in this game. It's just you're kind of dooming your position, and maybe you have to. Maybe you're just not strong enough right now to fight the rest of these boards.
Well, the money has been spent for Kerfuzzle. Getting the win streak is absolutely essential. Kevin Parker, though, is the Reaper coming in to try and knock down any win streaks immediately. The first Garen gets blown up, the second one as well. This is terrible news if you're trying to stack up Sure Shots because you've got no time to do it in.
And this is why so many players absolutely despise reroll comps. They hit a power spike in kind of the wrong rhythm or a different rhythm to how a more normal fast 8, fast 9 comp ends up hitting that power spike. And in this case, no matter how much you roll here, Kerfuzzle would have lost anyway. So it just becomes this doom spot where if you're already behind and you face these kind of Exodia players that have power spiked so fast, it's going to be so hard to come back into this.
And that injection of power into lobby is causing Cambiz, who has lost the win streak. Enzo's is, of course, no longer undefeated as well. We do get to take a little flavor of the lobby as well. So, of course, we saw Lusher picking up the Infinity Team from before. So we know that's contested in the lobby. Ging with the laser core down the bottom. And, of course, Cambiz moving up to Prismatic Prankster up at the top. We knew that was a Gadget Team before.
And Lusher also going to be on Infinity Team. In this case, a little bit healthier. They're Kerfuzzled, has that Rammus 2. Infinity Team at the end of the day, I think, wants to buy time more than anything. I think CC is maybe one of the most important aspects of the comp to really do well, especially later into the game. Because Sure Shot stacking, all it wants is time. It wants to continue to stack, and kind of all you can do is really stall out the fight, and the scaling happens by itself.
I do like the move from Lusher here to bring in the Rammus as a secondary frontline disruptor for exactly the reason you're saying, to buy more time. Of course, both of our Infinity Team players will be fighting with each other to get that Garen up to 2-star for the time being, so won't be as beefy as he could be. Lusher slipping down the table into 4th place. Right now, 3 players around the mid-30s.
And to no one's surprise, after days 1 and 2, Enzo, 84 HP, leading the lobby. It's not a fluke. You didn't get here by accident. You don't get a 90% top 4 rate by accident with a field as stacked as this one. And I'm not sure what he's doing so much better than everyone else, but it seems like he truly is unstoppable in this weekend.
Yeah, well, Camby's just below as well. Certainly, France looking pretty darn good as Loyal Ketzer, hoping for a longer-term comeback. Of course, with Kerfuzzle in so much trouble, that's going to be very, very good news if you're on the other end of that Infinity debate.
Looking at what Kevin's going to go into, what he can do to continue defending this win streak. He wants to have as much gold as possible. He's hit his 3 stars, yes, but now he wants to start leveling up and finding more and more hearts. And he hit Axiom Mark as well. I was talking about it. I blessed it into existence. I'm sure Makes is very happy that my blessings are going to these German players, because this is the augment that makes Lulu Reroll go from very good from the spot that Kevin was in to almost unbeatable. You need to have an equally high-rolled spot to actually beat this out, because it's just a crazy combination. We saw with Ezreal as well. Once you have the right setup for it, Axiom Mark really turns a comp into a first place almost by itself.
Yeah, we've seen exactly what this Lulu comp can do under the right circumstances. Everybody else in the lobby needs to fear, but none more than Kerfuzzles here as the only UK representatives in massive, massive trouble. At least the Samira is online to be able to pump out a decent amount of damage with all these sure shot stacks, but the front line is not quite there. I think Kerfuzzle might even be out here.
Going to be a big loss, and it will be big enough. Kerfuzzle maybe doesn't have that same amount of experience on the big stage. The pressure might be getting to him, but all in all, to start things off, it's going to be an 8th place, so hard to recover from, not just from a point perspective, from a standing perspective, but also from a mental standpoint. You're coming into this game, into this day 3 rather, thinking, I have less experience than everyone else in the field. I have to really fight to prove that I deserve to be here, and the start is not what you hope for.
No, not at all. To be put in that position where you know you have to play better than all of these very experienced players to recover from this start is honestly appalling news for him. But he did say, coming into this one today, that he will be happy just to have made it here at all, because to be in amongst these illustrious 8 players proves you're one of the best in the region.
And Ging running some questionable tactics, picking up the rocket-propelled fist. Everyone in the lobby has to be very, very careful. Make sure your carry rather, is not in the corner. In this case, just a little Nasus ends up taking the hit. Lulu very much alive and very much trying to one-hit KO every single unit on the board. You can sing along the Glitterlands if you want to, Peter, because essentially it's 1 Glitterlands, 1 kill all the way through until you hit units like this Belva the Hagage of Night, but she can survive for a tiny bit longer, but not long enough to actually win the fight. Kevin Parker has been win streaking ever since stage 3 when he was able to hit all of his upgrades.
Yeah, we've already seen that Kevin Parker's more than willing to invest the gold in. As you can see from the right-hand side, a lot of our players' gold reserves are looking very shaky indeed. Ketzer and Camby the only ones to really keep a serious amount of cash to splash. I think Camby's honestly up towards the top, doing pretty darn well to still have this much gold.
And the mental damage that is being dealt in Stage 4 and is going to be dealt in Stage 5 will be massive, because we don't only have 1 Rocket Propelled Fist, we also have Hayden with a Future Sight. That's a Zephyr you have to dodge as well, so players have to be very careful, especially on turns where they want to roll down. They want to make sure to either level and roll, or they think they're not stable enough, they have to roll as well. They need to separate 5 to 10 seconds before the fight starts to scout their player pool, check if there is going to be one of those Blitz Hooks, one of those Zephyrs, and make sure they are not dealt with in terms of their carry being just put into the air for 8 seconds, for example.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure for an already high-pressure situation to know that missing one thing when you've got so many different things running through your mind right now could spell the end of the round. As we check in with Enzo, who has spent every piece of gold that he has to bring this board to fruition. Double Giant Slayer and the Runans. A quick switch of things around to try and make sure that this is not a predictably placed board.
This is what we were talking about with the flexibility that Riftwalkers offers you. You're essentially maybe forced to pick up a Darkness Simulation, an Aatrox Augment, and you just are able to slot this in very freely. There are so many flex spots in the comp. All you need is some frontline. Aatrox provides that. The damage, you have it. Vex on one side, Jhin on the other, Belveth helping out as well. It's a mix and match of so many great units that do so well together, all in one comp, and we're seeing the results. Enzo is still sitting very, very safe. 84 HP, 3 win streak here as well.
And punishing everybody at the bottom. Ketzer very close to being knocked out. just ahead of Kerfuzzled, and we can see the rest of the lobby is responding in force. 2 stars dropping in rapidly. They know the pace is picking up. Now Enzo, who of course was undefeated before, now on a streak again, and Cambiz replies the strongest of all.
Cambiz hit Prankster Crown earlier in Stage 2 as his Prismatic Augment. It's not a Gadgeteen Crown, but it's still a Crown Augment that fits the comp. And it gives you a huge power spike in the early game in Stages 2 and 3 specifically because of that stun that is so hard to come by usually in any of the early game units' kits.
We'll see how it does up against Ketsa's board here. Ketsa, of course, desperately clinging on to life. We've got the Nunu dancing in the corner as well. I mean, the board is pretty damn strong. The stun for a second will delay things very slightly, but the Gnar just walks right into the backline. You don't need a hacker when you're this damn hard to put down.
I have to say, Peter, I think we have different definitions of dancing. Nunu, in this case, he is more of a, plowing through units in a way that they will not recover. We saw it there, the Nico was killed off. And
evidently,
in this case,
David, you've never seen me dancing.
I haven't, and I think I'm going to lean towards maybe that's a good thing in this case, Peter.
Well, Ketsa can't find any joy at all being eliminated there in 7th place. Lusher seems to be next up the chopping block. We are just cutting down players piece by piece. People thought they were kind of safe towards the mid-table. With Kevin putting down the pressure, Enzo as well from the top. There's very little room to maneuver.
Kerfuzzled played Infiniteam, got an 8th. Lusher is on Infiniteam, currently sitting at 6 HP and also in the 6th position in the HP standings. Is this a sign that maybe Infiniteam will not be doing as well as we've seen it do in past days coming into this day 3? Is it just the lobby itself that was warped around that Prismatic Augment, warped around that Kevin Parker comp with a Lulu online?
Well, one of the things Mace was pointing out for us before we came online today was Infiniteam was one of those comps that definitely wasn't very popular, but amongst our top 8 was more popular than we would have expected looking at the rest of the field. But Lusher here playing the contested composition, I think is about to prove you right. There's just too much power even for an Infiniteam 7 board to handle out in 7th. Oh, sorry, 6th. My apologies.
Specifically for, I think, the Lulu comp with Axiomark, it's actually quite a bad matchup for Infiniteam because you're copying these weaker units that essentially serve as just this, fuel for the Axiomark to start popping off or to just continue chaining those Glitter Lances one by one, and that's the case there. Ideally, something like a mech frontline, for example, is actually very good against Lulu because the Lulu gets stuck on the mech for long enough that the Axiomark does not actually proc and get those chains together.
I mean, we have seen a few different mechs coming through, but no signs of that so far this lobby. I mean, right now it does seem like disaster is looming. So, yes, the Infiniteam's being removed from the equation. From Enzo's side of things, if we put these 2 boards, we've got 2 big hitters right now. Kevin Parker and Enzo. The Lulu against the Renegade comps. How do these measure up against each other?
Also the same thing applies for example, something like a Pike jumping in immediately gets one shot for the most part by Lulu, so allows that chain reaction to happen. I think the biggest concept is you need a big beef unit like maybe that Aatrox to tank a few hits to stop that DPS from the Lulu from coming out and allowing the rest of your team, something like a Bel'Veth, for example, to sneak in behind that Lulu and maybe kill it off while it is kind of stuck on that Aatrox. We'll see how the positioning works out here. The Aatrox is in front of the Lulu, does shroud the Lulu as well. It's all up to the pathing of this Bel'Veth alongside the damage from the Jhin. If you're able to combo a lot of that damage together and kill off the Lulu before she can continue proccing, that might go in your way, but Aatrox is already dead. The Morgana is up next. The Bel'Veth is also taking fire from the Glitter Lance, and I think it's just too much to handle for any board in this game 1.
Well, I did like what we were seeing from the beginning of that round from Enzo, who did exactly what you were hoping he was doing. Put some incredibly large tanks in front of that Lulu and bought some time. Maybe, just maybe, with enough itemization, the Lulu will eventually cap out. But of course, with Kevin Park having so many wins, he has got money to spend to push this board even further. For Hayden, though, has spent everything he has to get online the best admin laser core combination he can. We've got the itemized Warwick, and we've got the Mordekaiser in the mix as well. This is about as strong as the board's going to get.
You're able to Zephyr juggle as well, keep it open and available for when you're at 5 HP. You maybe just have to win one more fight against the top 4 if Ging is able, or if Ging loses this fight as well. So having this Zephyr available 8 seconds up in the air is huge. As long as you can hit an important target on the side of your opponent. Can the Lulu be hit here? Is going to be so big. It can't. No. The Bel'Veth has to be items ready. There was no slot open to get this Lulu up into the air, and that might be the difference maker in this fight. Hayden's laughing. I think he knows there's nothing he can do to stop the Glitter Lands from continuing to pop off. I mean, look at how big the loss is. Kevin Parker so much stronger than everyone else in this lobby. Ging also in trouble. Can he survive? He's at 13 HP. Maybe if he loses, he can still win it here if he loses by little enough. And in the end, it looks like it will be the case.
Yeah, I think very grateful to just hang on for a few moments longer. Again, this lobby has been so aggressive here in our first round of finals. Of course, these players will be learning from every game because they'll be playing exclusively against each other. Look to see how they adapt as they go forwards, particularly for our players who finish out low.
And both Kevin Parker and Cambiz are playing two of the comps that have the highest win rate percentage in the meta right now, alongside what we saw a lot of yesterday, which is Ezreal reroll with the quick draws, especially with the Axiom Arc or Last Stand, for example. So I have to imagine that Enzo, he was very strong in the mid game. He got a very big spike by getting his Riftwalker board online, but it might start falling off slowly. I do know Cambiz, I don't think he's hit 5 Gadgeteen, didn't have the plus Gadgeteen emblem, so maybe that will be the difference maker in terms of Kevin potentially winning out and Cambiz ending second.
I mean, absolutely. This is the position you want to be in a lobby that is, this volatile, to have at least the HP to survive long enough. It's a classic situation of I don't need to outrun the zombies, I just need to outrun everybody else falling in face of Kevin.
The only upside for Enzo is he is very rich. He has a chance to cap out his board even higher by going level 9 because he was able to stay so stable in Stage 4 and most of Stage 5. He didn't have to spend his gold to continue to be strong. Instead, he can go down this route of trying to go to 9 and just filling his board with legendaries.
Up against Cambiz here, who is on 32, so can survive this round. Ging is still up on the chopping block with just 5 left to go. We will have ourselves a very close final 3, I think, depending on how many people end up going up against Kevin Parker, because, as you noted before, the losses that Kevin hands out are not just happening nearly every round, but they are big losses that take a ton of HP off each player who encounters him.
And the Nunu with absolutely fantastic items. BT, one of the best items on Nunu. And as I was predicting, I think Cambiz and Kevin Parker will slowly start bubbling up to the top of the HP standings. Enzo has done his job. He is playing a top 4 comp. And it looks like he's in the top 4. Am I correct, Peter?
You absolutely are. And Ging, of course, is doing exactly what he wanted to do, which is to make sure that he stayed in the top 4 as well. Again, we've got 4 places up immediately for the Global Championship. And if you make top 4 from all of these players, you will be there.
Oh no, Enzo has 2 Shrouds, Cambiz has 2 Shrouds. Nowhere is safe on any of these boards when you're facing either of these players. But for Kevin, I don't think it really matters. Lulu's mana pool is so low that I think it's not going to be a big deal. And once she gets the Axiom Arc online, she just continues to really chain all of these glitter lances one by one, killing off these units so quickly. Maybe the Nunu can do a little something to stop the Lulu. Lulu went quite low with the gun. Oh, she's dead!
For the first time in a long time, we've finally seen a break in the armor of Kevin Parker. Now it's just to see if Gnar can finish off the job here. Good support from the Sona in the back. Maybe, just maybe, but no.
And they still can't. That goes to show how strong this comp is. The scaling of Heart itself makes it so in a long fight, units like this one can still clean up. And despite Lulu dying, Kevin Parker continues his streak.
That is such a dispiriting thing to happen. You were trying so hard to make that happening. The position was so good for Cambiz to get the Gnar on there quickly, but to still lose anyway, it just now begs the question of whether or not you can survive long enough to outlast Cambiz, both on relatively similar HP, both hoping to take a loss as they can.
And the stats just perfectly reflected in these last few fights. 5 Gadgeteen, one of the strongest vertical traits to get into if you want to win games out, as well as 6 Hearts with the Lulu comp specifically. The Shrouds come through, the Sona trying to do her best. We'll see if the Jhin is able to snipe off some key targets in this case. The Sona's still very healthy. She has the scaling from the Hearts as well as the scaling from the Archangels as well. So as this fight goes longer and longer, her damage, her healing becomes more and more. And the Gnar, it's just a perfect combination. The Sona heals the Gnar heals himself. It buys time, but too much damage coming through. The Gnar is now dead. It's all up to the Nunu. He's going the wrong way. Can he do it in time? No. Jhin snipes off the Nunu and Cambiz down to 4 HP.
That was such an opportunity for Cambiz there to guarantee the top 2 position. But it's certainly, if you can't beat Enzo's, you're going to have an even worse time against Kevin Parker. Last couple of items coming in as Cambiz scoops up the blue buff for both these players. But I don't even imagine what kind of item could really change the outcome of this lobby overall.
Well, the Renegade Emblem is going to be great for Enzo if you can try and change up the way his board is, the way, what the Zac is doing with the Riftwalker comp as well. Finds the Urgot 2, that's massive as well, but has a tough decision to make. Does he sell? He does in the end. adds in the Viego, adds in the Urgot with the Renegade emblem.
We have seen this from Enzo before, of course, as our last bit of specialization comes in. Kevin Parker making his board even stronger as well. A board that has proven to be unbeatable for such a long time here in game number 1. Enzo knows that the Executioner is coming up next. Kevin Parker will be bringing the full force of his board to the field. Lulu on the left-hand side will go straight this time into a target dummy, but Jin is potentially going to shoot through onto her.
Jin's almost dead, though. He's down to 10% HP. He's slowly able to piece in a little bit more damage. Oh, well, it's over. Jin is now dead, Peter, and I don't think there's anything that Enzo can do. It might come down to who loses by more when it comes to the end result of who finishes second, who finishes third. Enzo down, -8, third place for now, but Kambiz, we're still awaiting a result.
Whoa,
-13. And the winner is Kevin